if you can, maybe for 20 minutes a day, and it'll become easier as time goes on. You'll be able to go further within the space of time you've set for yourself. So, for those of you who are familiar with me, you'll probably start to discern a pattern in the talks I've been giving. Some of you may have listened to the first half of this particular talk, which I gave last Thursday. Others who are stalwart Tuesday evening meditators might remember the associating with fools talks that I gave. Today we come to the tail end of teaching about why it is desirable to associate with those who have wisdom rather than those who have foolishness as their main identifying features. And just as with fools, whatever you associate with frequently tends to brush off on you, especially if you are at a stage in your spiritual cultivation where you are not very savvy about preferentially acquiring certain habits from those around you. Often when we start out in our career of spiritual transformation, we don't know what we're looking for. We want something better in life, but we don't know where to get it from, we don't know who to get it from, and if we get in with the wrong sort of people, then the things we might not want will brush off on us instead of the things which are actually going to be benefit or conducive to our development. So last time when I talked about the wise ones and how to look for them, because sometimes it's not obvious that they have wisdom, but I gave some telltale signs that maybe you can look out for in order to guide you towards the people who are likely to be able to have some wisdom to brush off on you. And some of the things which I mentioned last time were their habitual behaviors, their perception of what constitutes profit in life, their quality of mind, if you can tell that by looking at them, their virtues, and their level of discretion, especially about choosing between things which are harmful or beneficial in life. But today we come to some other qualities, and what I hope to talk about is the qualities of friendship which are practiced by those who have wisdom, who are likely to be able to further your own spiritual development, and also the best way to get up close with such people in order that you can receive the influence of their good habits. So let's look at their friendship first of all. There's a certain teaching in Buddhism called the Sigalovada Sutta, or the Discourse to Sigala, which you may have heard of. Sometimes it's known as the 6 directions. And amongst those 6 directions, there is what's known as the Northern Quarter, which is how good friends ought to treat one another in order that they would share good habits with one another. So in broad brushstrokes, true friends are divided into 4 groups. Firstly, those who are helpful and act for others' welfare. So any compassionate person, when they see someone who's experiencing hardship or suffering, would generally do anything they could to help their friend escape from that hardship. Secondly, they would be consistent in their friendship. So however they've behaved towards their friends in the past, they will not suddenly change to treat them better or worse, depending on the circumstances that friend finds himself in. So they wouldn't suddenly ghost their friends when they fall in hard times, and they wouldn't suck up to friends who suddenly come into some money. Thirdly, they will be a friend of wise counsel. So having wisdom, they are able to offer wise counsel. And lastly, they'll be a sympathetic friend. So these 4 broad brushstrokes are extended into a lot of details in other parts of that particular teaching. In some places, they're expanded to 10 different things. In other places, they are expanded to 16 different things. And as there is some overlap, I will save a little bit of time and I will combine them to sort out the repetitions. So, a wise one would show their true friendship, fostering virtue in those around them by being generous. And it said that when they see anyone who is experiencing hardship or suffering, then they would sacrifice anything to help their friend escape that hardship. Secondly, they'll have kind words to show, only speaking words that are polite and true. Thirdly, they would never tell lies to those who they count as their friends. And lastly, they would show due respect even to other members of our family, our children, grandchildren, and even those toward whom we have a debt of gratitude, as if all of them were part of the adopted family. Furthermore, a wise one would be a helpful friend by protecting you even when you're off your guard. Some people think that people who are friends or friendly are ones who go along with everything they want, even if what they want might be stupid. But a person who's really looking out for you would be someone who would protect you when you are being careless in the things which you want for yourself. So they would be your conscience. So if you're behaving recklessly, they would look out for you. And if you're neglecting even your property, like sort of people who wander out of their house and don't close the door behind them in this day and age, then they would be the sort of person who makes sure everything is safe and secure when you come back. They would be our refuge in times of danger. As the saying goes, a friend in need is a friend indeed. And to keep it practical, the scripture also mentions that if your friend asks for something and the other person provides twice as much as they asked for, then they are a true friend. So if you ask for an apple and they give you 2 apples, then you can tell that they're your true friend. Yes. So a wise person would also be someone who is a constant friend in bad times and good by confiding in you. But at the same time, they don't go spreading your secrets about. They don't abandon you when you fall on hard times, and they would even die in your place. So pretty hard to find, right? The quality of wise counsel is because they would warn you against unwholesome behaviors, encourage you towards wholesome behaviors, and save up new things to tell you. So they know the sort of things you already know, and they would tell you only things which don't go on about the same old stuff. And they have your spiritual welfare at heart by pointing you in the direction of heaven. Lastly, a wise one would also be a sympathetic friend, which means they would not laugh at your misfortunes. They would congratulate you if you have good fortune, rather than being jealous of you. They would speak out in your defense against anyone who maligns you, and they would stand up for you for those who speak well of you. So, as you can see, the wise one is all about bringing out positivity in a person. And at this point, we might not just think about who are friendly to us, but also how we would appear, how wise we might appear in the eyes of others towards whom we are friends. So this is an exercise which you can turn around in 2 different ways. If you ever have the luck to come across such a genuine friend, you should take care to associate closely with them and treat them with the utmost respect. And such people really, who are so altruistic, really could only exist in our world because they have been brought up in quite an amenable environment. So quite a positive environment to nurture that sort of quality of friendship in a person. And we'll come back to that sort of amenable environment in a couple of blessings' time. But I'm sure you'd agree that the sort of friendship which these people offer is something that society really needs. If you just have one such person in society, what a huge difference they could make to those around them. So, supposing we are in luck and we come across such a wise and a precious person, are there things we could do to increase the chance for their goodness to brush off on us as well? And these are rather similar to what we would avoid doing for fools. Firstly, we would try to make sure that we meet up with them frequently. If we know someone has the characteristics of a wise person, then we ought to see if we can see them regularly. If we hear that such and such a temple or a meditation center is attended by wise people, such as yourselves, then we should visit regularly. And generally there will be a sense of recognition which you have when you meet up with someone of those qualities, almost as if you've already been friends with them for a long time already. It's almost a subconscious sense of recognition of the sort of wholesomeness of that person, a sense of recognition. Secondly, you ought to make yourself known to that wise person. Some people make it all the way to a meditation center and then hide around the corner when they see the monks coming, or they think that having a selfie with the monk ought to be about the same as having an association with them. Yes, that might not be the whole story. The third thing is you ought to be sincere towards them, because if you want them to help fix your faults, then you have to be honest. There should not be something which you hold back as a secret, almost as if you want to keep back a few sort of little faults for yourself. You should have a sense of a loyalty towards them. I think in this context it means almost as if you are apprenticing yourself to this person in order to learn about their good habits. Generally, it means defending that person. You having sort of chosen them as a sort of a mentor, then you ought to speak well of them and not gossip about them behind their back. And in times of need, if we notice that that wise person is busy with something that we could help with, then we should offer our assistance without reluctance. In this way, we get to learn not only from what those wise people teach or preach, but we also see what they exemplify behind the scenes, as it were. So if they walk the talk, then we can see what it means for them to walk. Joining up with them, this is number 6, to eat with them or just to be with them in our free time gives the opportunity to discuss subtle points of practice with them. So that is generally a useful thing to clear up any doubts that we have. And lastly, and this is probably the most important step, what you notice in all these lists of things is generally that the most important one will come at the end. We ought to reflect upon whatever good habits they have imparted to us, or whatever knowledge that they have imparted to us by practicing it in earnest. Even if you've done all the other 6 steps and you haven't come to the 7th one, then you cannot really call it effective association with that wise person. But if you've done none of the other 6, but you learn and reflect wisely and put into practice what you've learned, then that would pretty much cover it just the same. So what we talk about as association, if you think back to what we learned about fools, I mentioned 3 words to avoid for fools, which maybe you can even remember. Joining, receiving, giving. To do with fools, we said you can interact, but without transaction. But with wise people, if you have checked them out and they seem to measure up to what you would consider to be a person who has wisdom, then joining, receiving, and giving would be things which would be encouraged in that context. So if in any society there was nobody to be found who had any wisdom anymore, it would be a very bad sign for that society on individual, interpersonal, and social levels. Sometimes even the way the citizens of a country are governed by those who are in power can be seen in the same way as a relationship between supposedly wise people governing those who ought to be benefiting as a result of that association. But where those in power are not wise, then a lot of problems can occur for any particular country, especially where people who are not particularly wise get into power, then it can be particularly damaging for the whole of society. Because instead of serving those they're supposed to serve, then those in power fail to offer that sort of wise friendship towards their citizens. Generally, the level of ethics in that society will go downhill pretty quickly. There will be an explosion of prejudices in society. Those in power tend to abuse their position, and they don't respect human dignity on an economic level, because many of the sorts of ways people earn money in that society will be things which are beneath the level of human dignity. So people make money, but they don't have their dignity anymore as a result of the governance provided by these sorts of people. So there's exploitation simply to get money in such societies. So even this perspective of just friendship can be expanded on a social level as almost a model for how people in positions of influence need to be particularly careful about the way they treat those whose lives they influence, because that's exactly the same sort of dynamic as dynamic between friends or friendship, which can be either effective for cultivating good habits or a damaging association. So some people ask, oh, well, I'm not sure I've got any friends who would lay down their life for me. Does this mean I should have no friends? Is a better idea? Because we live in an imperfect world. I'm sure you find it hard to find anyone who scores perfect points on all these items of friendship to the point that they would be considered 100% a wise person. So what can we do in such a situation? The reality of life, and it may seem very black and white if all you've heard from me is the last 2 lectures, fools on one hand, wise people on the other hand, and no middle ground. But the reality of life is that those who are 100% wise are as hard to find as those who are 100% fools. And what you tend to find is that in the middle there's a lot of grey area. And in that grey area, we are in there too. Yeah. If you're talking about the Buddha or someone who's like completely enlightened, okay, 100% wise. But like 2,600 years on, pretty hard to find. So what can we do in the meantime? Is there any wisdom to be had from people who are not 100% wise? What can we do about that? And what we have to work with, especially in this day and age, is generally what you would call partially wise people. People who have wisdom that is not perfect, but maybe more than our own. All of what I've said today can be applied to those people, but with a little bit of a proviso that you need to look out for what parts of them, those partially wise people, that maybe you want to skip emulating. Yes. So, partially wise people might be monks who train themselves earnestly in meditation, but who have not yet reached enlightenment. And there may be many other people who we consider maybe our elders and betters, who are also partially wise, but maybe have a few bad habits as well. They might be parents, they might be teachers, and in such a case, it may not be our place to take the moral high ground for such people. Nevertheless, we should try to sift out any wisdom which they can offer us, and learn from that while not joining in with anything that is obviously a bad habit. So we need to do our best to learn only the good points and to mimic only those. If you are the sort of person who focuses exclusively on people's faults, then you will find there's no one who comes up to your high standards except for one person, who is you, which is not going to help you get any better. So in the meantime, you need to try to focus on the good points that you can perceive in people and try to allow those parts of those partially wise people to brush off on you. Just as with the fools, and I did warn you a couple of sessions ago that you might say, oh, I don't have any fools in my life, I'm protected from such people, I could spot them coming a mile away, therefore I can ignore everything the monk said just now. And I told you it's not true, because we also have that foolish voice inside our own head that we have to be careful of, even if we no longer need to fear fools in the outside world. And in just the same way, we have inner and outer wise ones. You might call them the inner teacher and the outer teacher. So just as there are those in the outside world who we might learn something from, but even within ourselves, even though a still small voice within ourselves, or maybe not a very distinct voice inside ourselves, there is an element of wisdom in everybody, but it may be buried rather deep for certain people. But sometimes it's like we have a voice of conscience in our own head, which we could learn from if we listen closely to it. The more we listen to it, the more we encourage it, the more clear and the more accurate that voice will become. And this would be what's known as learning from the wise one within ourselves. Often we get that voice, but we might be curious to know where it's coming from. And if you meditate deeply enough, I can guarantee that one day you will find out where the voice is coming from. But to finish off with for today, I'd like to give you a little bit of a story, which is an example of how a brief contact with someone who is wise can turn a person's destiny around for the better. And it's the story of a character called the Red-Bearded Executioner. So you can imagine, probably pretty much in need of a wise one, right? If they still have that as a career option these days. Probably not in this country anyway. Probably United States for this sort of thing. Yes. But yes, from the Dhammapada, which is a book of Buddhist verses, there is a proverb which says, better than 1,000 words that are senseless and unconnected with the realization of Nibbana is a single word of sense, if on hearing it one is calmed. And the story that goes with this particular proverb is the story of a public executioner in the ancient Indian city of Rajagaha. And this particular executioner was a very scary-looking guy with a red beard and copper-colored teeth, tawny skin, and a body covered in scars. So, to start with, he was not yet an executioner. He did not have a clear career path at that point. And what he really wanted was to join up with a band of 500 thieves. But for a long time, even the thieves didn't trust him. And the ringleader of the thieves would not accept him into their group because he looked so scary and untrustworthy. But in the end, he relented and allowed him to join the band of thieves. But not long afterwards, the thieves were rounded up by the army, and when no one could be found to execute all those thieves, because that was the penalty of death for like robbing people on the road or whatever, he stepped up and executed all his colleagues. And everyone was very impressed by his stamina. And after that, they offered him a job doing it. So this red-bearded guy, whose name in Pali language was Dhammakaya, agreed to do the executions in return for his own freedom. So he wasn't even loyal to his fellow thieves. So not a good sign, right? Not a wise one. I think he probably didn't end up in the first blessing for that one. So he betrayed his colleagues and executed all 500 of them. And afterwards he got set up in a career as public executioner. And he continued in post for 55 years. So, good karma or bad karma? Or anyone a civil servant, it's all good karma? Ooh, so we have bad, generally not good, right? Even if it's in an official capacity, it's still not good karma, okay? It's still by your own hand. So eventually he became too old to behead a person with a single blow of the axe. So once he's like only executing people on the second or third try, they realize they probably need to get a younger guy to do the job. So he was allowed to retire. And the tradition for retirement in those days was that he would be given a golden handshake, consisting of 4 gifts. A new set of clothes, some milk porridge made with fresh ghee, jasmined garlands, and some perfume. And to prepare for his retirement gift, he went to the river and bathed. Having done so, he put on the new clothes, decked himself with garlands, anointed his limbs with perfume, and went home in order to be given his special meal. And they set the special delicacy before him with some water for rinsing his hands. And just as he was about to start his meal, so his special retirement meal, which he's waited 55 years for, a monk appeared in the doorway on arms round. So monks go around with a bowl, and anyone who wishes to do so may give a gift of food in the monk's bowl. And Mr. Dhammakaya thought to himself, seeing the monk in the doorway, I've done nothing but bad things all my life. Now, maybe just for once in my life, I should do one good thing which maybe I can think about when I'm dying. So, seeing the monk, he thought, I will forego my special meal and give it instead to this monk, who happened to be not just an ordinary monk, but the right-hand disciple of the Buddha called Sariputta, who was very knowledgeable of the teachings. And he just emerged from 7 days meditation. So very pure in body, speech, and mind, a very worthy recipient for the gift. So after the meal, Sariputta gave a blessing, and he started to give a teaching to this red-bearded executioner. But the red-bearded executioner could not pay proper attention. He could not follow the teaching at all because his mind was all over the place, thinking about all the people whose heads he had chopped off throughout his life. So he was extremely disturbed by all these recollections, and Sariputta realized this. In order to put the man in a proper frame of mind, he asked a tactful question whether he had chosen to execute others or simply done it because he was ordered to do so. Now we know that it doesn't really make much difference, right? It's still bad karma. But the red-bearded executioner didn't know that, and Sariputta knew that he didn't know that. So hearing this, he thought, well, actually I just did it because the king told me. So he felt much better about his past. And that was good enough, okay? He felt better about what he'd done. And as he listened, he could now concentrate on the teachings of what the monk was trying to impart to him. And he's able to follow it, and his mind became much more calm and peaceful as a result. And a smile appeared on his face, and eventually he treated Sariputta with utmost respect. He walked Sariputta back to the temple, but on his way back, still contemplating the with purity of mind, all that he had learned, he was suddenly gored to death by a mad cow. This happens quite a lot in the Buddhist scriptures. But when this news was conveyed to the temple and all the monks asked about it, oh, what happened to this red-bearded executioner when he died? The Buddha revealed to them that in fact he had been born not only in heaven, but in the 4th level of heaven called Dusita, which is a pretty high level of heaven for someone who's done so much grievous bodily harm to prisoners on death row throughout his life. So they asked, how can this be? Most of these temple supporters who come to the temple every day, they only make it to the 2nd level of heaven. So how come this guy has made it to the 4th level of heaven with all this heavy bad karma? And the Buddha replied, as I said in the proverb, that from a single word which a person hears and brings peace of mind is of great benefit, much more than 1,000 ill-chosen words. And such great benefit, in fact, that it can lead to rebirth in a very high level of heaven. Because that had been what was on the mind of this red-bearded executioner at the last moments of his life. So from a very short time which he spent with a wise one who managed to use the right tactful words to encourage him to think not of the bad things in his past, but instead thinking of the good things, that man managed to turn around his destiny in the final moments of his life and go to a better place instead. So just as Dhammakaya could benefit so much from associating with a wise one for only a short time, all of us must have a much better chance of doing well in our destiny, even with a few words from a wise one. So without all that bad karma in our past, we can certainly prosper much more than the red-bearded executioner if we have the chance to associate with those who have wisdom. And if we ever come across people who have those qualities, then we should try to cultivate those qualities within our mind to the fullest extent, so that we can not only recognize wisdom on the outside, but start to recognize the wisdom within ourselves as well. So for today, I hope that some of what you have heard will encourage you to see the wisdom in those around you that you can learn from, but also to recognize the wisdom in yourself as well. Meditation, it should be added, is said to be a way of recognizing that wisdom within ourselves. So you could say that it is a way of associating with the wisdom inside ourselves in a very immediate way that anyone can practice, no matter who they have as their friends. Yes. Finally, for today, I will say that this is known as the Tuesday evening meditation class. There's also every Thursday evening a class which has a little bit of a longer meditation, up to 45 minutes, which you are also invited to join if Thursdays is convenient for you. Apart from that, online every Saturday there is a teaching and meditation in English between 7 and 8 p.m., which you may find convenient if you have traveled some distance to come here. Next Thursday, 21st of October, there will be a special event called a full moon meditation with a candle lighting as part of the meditation as well. Last time we did this, it was quite good fun, and this time the theme will be on the end of Buddhist Lent and all the empathy and sensitivity to self-improvement that comes with the festival at that time of year. Apart from that, as I said, I encourage you to meditate at home, and an app which you can download for free, which might encourage you to meditate further at home, is called Mind Gem. You can download that for Android or iOS, and it has a lot of meditation teachings and tracks guiding meditation, which you can follow along with as you are meditating, and also time yourself meditating as well, which might be useful if you don't already have it. But for today, I think I will leave it there and hand back over to Eva in case you have any questions, comments, or feedback which you'd like to share at this time. Yes. Has anybody got any questions they'd like to pose to the future monk tonight? You spoke a lot about the importance of interacting with wise people. Is there a way for us to interact more with you? Sorry, can you say that again? Is there a way for us to interact more with you? Me. Yes. Meeting up. I teaching, volunteering, joining the teachings here is a good way, and volunteering apart from that is another way in which you can help out as well. Yes. If you're interested in volunteering, talk to Eva. Anybody else with a question? If not, I'd like to ask a question actually. And it's going back to the scenario of a friend. Or should I say a wise person giving someone else twice as much as what they've asked for or needed. My immediate thoughts were, is that necessarily wise? Because it depends on who you're giving twice as much to.
I think.
I think the context would be when that person needs it. And I think the idea of it is to show that as a friend, you're not just giving them what is barely essential for them, but it's almost the feeling with which it's given is that I want you to have even more than you. You know, people are hesitant to ask for help, and you give them more than they ask for, with the thought that perhaps they haven't asked for as much as they really need. So, you being the wise person would see that and understand exactly how much to give, that they feel that you've given them much more than they even asked for.
Just to clarify then, I take it then that the person that you're giving to is somewhat wise?
Somewhat wise, yes.
Okay.
Because they've sought you out.
Yes.
Yes, not the sort of person who's trying to rip you off.
Sure. Thank you.
And you wouldn't let them be your friend unless you saw that potential in them.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm sure you wouldn't you wouldn't have a scrounger as your you wouldn't let them be your apprentice. No.
Thank you. Final call? If not, shall we pay respects to our teaching monk? By bowing 3 times, please. Bow. Bow.
So may all of you be blessed with wisdom, happiness, prosperity, and fulfillment in life. May all of you be able to find wisdom in those around you, and also wisdom in yourself easily, now and forevermore.
Please pay respect to the Lord Buddha by bowing 3 times. Bow. Bow. Bow.